What's the meaning of a need? And what's the difference between a need and a want? We all hear claims that certain groups or certain people need something. Therefore, you and I need to run out and help them address their need. But we don't ever ask the question, first of all, do they really have a need? And secondly, do we have a duty to suspend our judgment to help them? This comes out in many contexts. Currently, uh, probably the biggest or most famous context that you think about is the immigration context, both legal and illegal, where you've got people saying that all sorts of other people or groups, entire groups, need our help. Here's the question that we need to ask: what is the role of compassion when these people claim that you and I need to help someone else, when they are not using their money? Their idea of compassion is handing you and me the bill. Real compassion is when you say, you make a judgment using your freedom. You make a judgment that someone else has a need, and you say, I'm going to voluntarily help this person or this group because you have rights as an individual and you have freedom. If you want to be compassionate and make that judgment, that is your choice. When your neighbor says you should help someone else and they're not doing the help, but they want you to sacrifice what you've worked for, they're not being compassionate. They're giving you a bill. As a matter of fact, they're stealing from you because they're giving you a guilt trip. You're paying the price. They get the credit of saying, hey, look how nice I am. This is actually a form of what's called semantic narcissism, where people just get a rise out of having other people think that they're doing something good for the world, when in fact, they're putting a burden on their neighbors. These are the worst neighbors you could have if they live in your community because they don't actually help. They just go around making you feel worse and putting a burden on you, a financial burden as well as a psychological burden. These are bad people. Okay, they have a smiley face. Most people don't ever figure out what they're doing, but these are bad people. In terms of immigration specifically, uh, immigration is a burden on the host country. This is something that's been recognized by the Roman Catholic Church for centuries. There have been at least six papal encyclicals during the 20th century that have identified immigration as being specifically a burden on the host country and its people. Uh, the current philosophy of the Roman Catholic Church, now in the 21st century, is to turn that 20th century theory on its ear and actually reverse the teaching. But the 20th century Roman Catholic Church recognized that migration, whether it was caused by natural disasters or all of the wars that the 20th century was known for, um, migration was not an innocent activity. It was something that inherently harmed the country that accepted migrants because it put a burden on that recipient country and its people. The recognition being that resources are finite, uh, and that we don't have a limitless ability to help people without compromising our ability to help other people to whom we do owe a duty, namely our families. Needs versus wants. People will claim there's a need when really it's a want. The danger of satisfying a need when people make a claim of a need is that it will encourage more people to to say, this is something I want, but I'm going to claim it's a need in order to get what I want. And almost everyone knows when you help people today, they'll come back tomorrow and ask for more. Needs versus wants. What's the role of compassion? in all this. Compassion should be voluntary. If compassion involves a guilt trip, we see the nonprofit industrial complex going around basically shaking the tree, asking for money, uh, with the guilt trip, using the philosophy of compassion when really it's just redistribution of what you have earned. These people add nothing. They get to play the role of I'm the good guy through my nonprofit. Hey, help me out. For 64 cents a day, we can help these people who we claim there's a need. And in fact, 95% of the money we raise goes into our pocket. Yes, we do advertising. The kids get a couple of pennies, but this is really about we're funding ourselves. We're giving ourselves a job. This is exactly what the Cars for Kids people are being accused of. And actually, Cars for Kids, if you've heard the radio jingle or sometimes the TV jingle as well over the last 25, 30 years, Cars for Kids is now restricted from operating in the entire state of California. So this is a burgeoning problem with all these nonprofits making all these claims, and they just give pennies to the actual people they claim to be helping. Needs versus wants, you've got to make a distinction. Compassion is something that is claimed, but it's rarely deserved. Compassion should be exercised, but you and I have the ability and the duty to the people we do have a duty to care for, meaning our families. Um, there's a hierarchy of duties, family, but then you have the outside community, but the family comes first. The people who tell you otherwise are simply interested in getting more of the pie, more of your pie. And we have to reassert that when you work, what you work for is yours. It is not theirs. Someone else cannot come in and claim that when you work, that money, that your labor belongs to them. When a criminal mugs you, the criminal is saying what you have worked for belongs to them. I will take it by force. The charity that comes to you and says you should give up money because we claim there's a need. Well, they're using a different weapon, and it's a weapon of misplaced empathy. I actually respect the criminal more because the criminal respects you more. The criminal does not pretend to be a nice guy. The criminal does not give you a guilt trip. The criminal says, I will take it by force, but I'm not going to BS you, for lack of a better phrase, by saying that these people have a need. No, I have a crack addiction and I don't have to say anything. I'm just going to try to take it by force. I'm not going to bamboozle you, although bamboozling is in the genre of fraud. That's a different type of criminal activity. And actually, much of the claims of compassion are very similar to fraud. There's a point where you've got a process of deception. It may not be criminal fraud. It may not involve a degree of money that's serious enough to constitute a crime. But is there really much of a difference when someone claims that there's a need and there is no need? And even if there was, you don't necessarily have any duty to help these people because then it's forcing you to make a moral judgment that the stranger deserves your money before your family does, which I think is very offensive, and you should think it's very offensive as well. But this is the underlying philosophy of the calls for need and the calls for compassion. So we have to use that judgment, and we should feel free to use our individual judgment and assert our individual freedoms and our right to exercise independent individual judgment as to whether the people who claim there's a need actually have one. This has been the Capital Shrugged Report. I'm Eric Dixon. Thanks for joining.